We cannot keep on fighting against these kinds of nation-building projects, these revenue-generating projects, and then still have aspirations to add more and more social programs at the federal level. It doesn't make sense.
Liberal government is always talking about doing things together and being unified, except for when it comes to what they must contribute to the conversation. And then it's all, you got to do it my way or else. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name's Sterling. I've noticed recently from the Liberal government that they are doing a lot of mocking people that are not part of their clique. Again, we're back to this tribalization, this division along lines of political affiliation that the far left seems to embrace with such vigor. Now, when that is applied to them, they cry victim, they cry foul. But when they are the one doing it, they try to tell you that it's something that you deserve, and that you have to agree with them or else. Of course, we all know, those of us that are not, ideologically driven and opposed to other people's ideas, we know that it's just not the way that politics is supposed to be working, that it is a system of give and take. Now we have a lot of things going on in this country with Mark Carney talking a big tough talk while the economy spirals, while housing starts drop to the lowest that they've been. And they have dropped even when they reset the numbers. Like, it's shocking to consider the idea. I'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to open with a clip that I got from Philip Champagne, who has this expression, this sort of catchphrase that he's been saying for years in the House of Commons. And I get that it plays well on TikTok, and all of the Liberals clap along like trained seals. And so he tries to fit it in and throw it in every time whenever he gets an opportunity. However, what it says is something that we need to be looking at.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives. We will take no lessons from these guys, Mr. Speaker.
MP Champagne has been saying that for years. He always does it with a big flourish. He always does it with big drama. And the trained seals behind him always clap and stomp their feet, because they know that when they play that clip on Blue Sky, they'll get all of the far left to clap along with them, and they'll tell themselves that they're doing something wonderful. And the Liberal Party doesn't really care about results. They only care about whether or not people like them. That's the difference. One of the primary differences between the left and the right. The right can be very independent. The left has to do things as a group, as a clutch, as a clutter. They otherwise cannot get, I don't know what they get out of it, to be honest with you, because I don't understand the rationale, but I do know that it is the way that it operates. So when Philip Champagne stands up in the House of Commons in one breath and say, oh, well, let's hope that these Conservatives get behind our plan, even though they don't agree with your plan. And then when the Conservatives say, listen, you're doing this wrong, and here's an idea for you. They didn't have any problem when it was the GST off of new builds. They didn't have any problem when it was cut the carbon tax. They take all of the ideas from the Conservatives whenever it suits their purpose, whenever their basis finally said, hey, you know what, there's a lot of common sense coming out of the right wing. It bothers me when I see these people who try to claim that they're high and mighty and they have the ethical high ground and that they have this vision, but nobody else can tell them what to do. Only they are permitted to make these ideas, and there's no possible way that they could solve this problem getting advice from anybody else. Only they are the ones that understand it, even though they're the ones that brought us into this mess in the first place. Really quite telling to see the monumental arrogance of that statement. I got a clip from Twitter of Chrystia Freeland running to armed guards to escape answering a question from the independent media, which I'm pretty sure is just another level of discrimination. You have to answer the question for people, but I'll cover that in some other time. Right now, I just want to point to the cowardice, really, of this member of parliament who always does a big tough talk and who always acts like she's intellectually superior to everyone around her, who can't even answer a simple question. Now, I picked it up from Daisy Media. However, the reporter that's in it is from Rebel, so I'm just going to say them both out loud to ensure that I give credit where credit is due.
She just saw us, and it looks like she's going to run away. Chrystia Freeland just turned, saw us. It appears as though she's scared. Someone on the phone now. We just want to speak to our elected officials.
We live in fear since a year and a half. Madam Brennan.
Chrystia Freeland running from questions.
That she had to ask bodyguard for traveling with her until her car.
Stay on the sidewalk, please.
She refused accountability. This is our elected official.
You have to be very, very insecure about your position to run away from a person with a microphone. You have to realize that everywhere you go, there's going to be people with microphones and with cameras. Of course, we know that the Rebel News was already attacked by the RCMP bodyguard of Chrystia Freeland last year when he was asking her a very relevant question to what she was doing in the area. I mean, she was there for the Air India crash, the anniversary of it, and he was asking her questions, and the RCMP arrested her. Now that RCMP is currently being put through the ringer, and their RCMP is going to pay him an enormous amount of money. So I suppose he can have that. That doesn't give any excuse to Chrystia Freeland, who refuses to speak to independent media. And from what I can put together, there are two different independent medias. And to answer that, to get into her chauffeur-driven car, her SUV, right? Not an electric vehicle. Guys, did you notice? Nothing electric about that car. That car was running, carbon spilling out all over the place, while she got her armed escort to the car, and then 3 heavily armed men with police officer training, body armor, and sidearms to stand between her and the 100-pound lady with a microphone. A microphone. That's the only thing that she was running away from. Can you appreciate that? I mean, it's not like it was like somebody screaming, "Hey, rah, rah, sis, boom, bye, I'm going to get, mad or whatever." It was just, "Hey, what do you think about the situation between the Israelis who are being harassed inside of Canada? What are you doing about it as a Liberal member of Parliament?" A Liberal member of Parliament who also represents the city of Toronto. And she ran to her chauffeur-driven car, a car that was running when she got there. They didn't start it up when she got in. It was sitting there running, spewing gas and carbon and all kinds of stuff up into the air. So how's that for your net zero, huh? That's embarrassing. That's infuriating. There's so much about that Chrystia Freeland should be like, imagine in your mind that you're looking at, like, you're in Iran or you're in one of these other countries, and they say to themselves, this is how their elected officials behave. They run scared from a reporter who's only armed with a microphone, questions, and her intellect. Then you wonder why we're a joke on the world stage. Well, I guess it's no wonder, eh? Danielle Smith and Scott Moe had a meeting together, which I suppose is something that they should be doing. And then they held the press conference, and Danielle Smith spoke a little bit eloquently about some of the subjects that they were covering. And I wanted you to hear it because I believe that it sends a very strong message to Ottawa. It sends a very, very confrontational message to Ottawa, rightly so. I mean, I'm not trying to hold it against Danielle Smith or Scott Moe. They have been mistreated by Ottawa for years now, in the same way that Philip Champagne treats all conservatives with such contempt and such disregard to their rights and to their equality. So, you can see how it is now manifest in these two premiers who are trying their very best to look after the people inside of their own province, as well as acquiesce to some of the concerns and issues that is happening inside of Canada. Now, when you hear what they have to say, you will understand that the message, the tone has changed.
The national self-sabotage that has happened over the last 10 years has to end. That's what I mean by enough is enough. We cannot keep on fighting against these kinds of nation-building projects, these revenue-generating projects, and then still have aspirations to add more and more social programs at the federal level. It doesn't make sense. If you want to support the expansion of social programs to help your people, you've got to generate wealth to tax in order to be able to do it. And I think that is probably maybe the West has gotten around to understanding that faster than some of our friends in the East, but that's okay. And we can work with a coalition of the willing of the Western provinces and territories, which seems to be solidifying. This is I think, the reason why the port-to-port-to-port concept has gotten such traction with the territorial and provincial leaders, is that we can all see how we can benefit from it. And we're trying to find ways to have our friends in Eastern Canada benefit too, but, maybe they have to develop their own projects and their own ideas.
The Western provinces and the territories are a coalition of the willing. Now, don't misunderstand me. I believe that they have had enough. They have been waiting and waiting and waiting, and the Liberal government with their ideology is quite happy to watch them wither on the vine. They're taking matters into their own hands because they have been left with no other choice. You heard the tone has changed. And now we are no longer talking about some referendum in Alberta. We're talking about 5 of Canada's regions working together, excluding Ottawa, so that they can generate revenue from port to port to port. I don't disagree with them. And I again will say at this point, magnetic levitation moves freight. And that's the best thing that we should be beginning with. I'll have to cover that. Let's go back to Danielle Smith and Scott Moe.
Quebec has substantial natural gas resources, and they should develop their own pipelines for their own interests to wean themselves off their reliance on gas from the United States. They should use it to develop their own royalty structure so they can develop their own revenue to pay for their own services for their own people, so that they don't have to rely on transfers that largely come from Western Canada to be able to do it.
The gulf between where we are and where we need to get to is simply a differential of policies. Policies really matter. And when you look at the policies that have been introduced federally over the last decade and what they have done, or the impact, positive or negative, that they've had on the Canadian economy, or specifically the natural resource economy, largely based in Western Canada, versus the policies that have come from a government like the government of Alberta or the government of Saskatchewan, that have always been put in place, yes, to protect our environment and to include all people that can be included and involved in those investments, but have always been put in place with the eye to bringing that project, bringing that investment to our province, to our nation, for the betterment of all Canadians. And so
I believe that it's very substantial to be pointing out that Quebec sends all of their money to other countries when they buy fuel. The hypocrisy in trying to convince me that it's okay by them spending all of their money down at the United States every time they put fuel in the tank, so that they don't have to give that wealth to other parts of Canada, while they get $13 billion in handouts from Ottawa. That is just shocking. It's shocking that Mark Carney would entertain that. But I guess you have no choice, right? When over half of your seats come out of Quebec, you have to basically do whatever they tell you to do. Mark Carney's not his own man when it comes to Trump. Mark Carney's not his own man inside of Canada. He's a puppet of one or the other. And the Quebec government sitting there trying to convince Canadians that they don't want anything to go through their province, while they send all of their money down into the United States and whatever transfers back to Saudi Arabia. I thought it was Canada first. I thought it was Canada. I thought we were building an internal economy. I thought we were going to be doing trade. Now, I told everybody that Quebec was going to be a problem with all of this internal trade. Quebec has always been the biggest issue for internal trade because they don't want anything from any other province ever. Apparently, they don't have any problem getting American gasoline. That doesn't seem to be troubling them at all. They don't have any problem taking the American money when they're selling their aluminum. And now that the Americans don't want their aluminum, they're all like, hey, wait, rest of Canada, buy our stuff. Well, perhaps you should be developing your own resources, Quebec, just like you want the rest of the country to do, just like the rest of the country wants to do, because they are not getting $13 billion in handouts from the federal government, from the Western provinces. And they want to live in comfort, in luxury. They want to live in middle-class luxury, which is to say there's an end goal to their daily bills. Their car's paid off. The house gets paid off. Their kids are getting good teeth and good education. It's not a massive dream, the middle-class dream. Maybe they get over 55 and they can play some golf all day long, take some vacations. What's wrong with that? I've lived in Quebec. What I just described is something that every person in Quebec strives for. Maybe not the golf, but the rest of it. So I believe that Danielle Smith and Scott Moe are making a very strong point that they have these resources that are being transferred to other parts of the country. Those parts of the country where they do to develop their own resources wouldn't need handouts from other provinces, wouldn't need that money moving around. And we could send that money in other directions. We could send that money into Labrador or into Nunavik. We could send that money into the Yukon or Northwest Territories. And we could then develop some of the issues and concerns that we have with that part of the country. I don't believe that what I'm saying is unreasonable. What is unreasonable is people like Philip Champagne and Mark Carney saying that they refuse to hear any of it because it didn't come from their base and that's all there is to it. That is very unreasonable. That is very narrow-minded.
What we hear in words from this new Prime Minister in the existing government are very good. And I would say they're strong statements that are being made. Over the next number of weeks and months, those statements are very quickly going to have to transition into actions. Actions in the way of repealing certain pieces of legislation, changing a number of regulations, and ultimately changing some significant pieces of legislation like the Environmental Impact Assessment Act.
That's, I think, an important national conversation for us to have. But I can tell you that I'm far more interested in working with the coalition of the willing, with those who already get it, and already see how we can mutually help each other rather than trying to push water up a hill. Let's just work with the projects that we know can be successful in short order, benefit us all, and then we can expand the conversation to those who are a little more slowly getting the picture. But I think everybody is coming around to understanding that being on Team Canada means these kinds of projects have to go ahead. We can't just keep saying no.
What I heard Danielle Smith say in a very diplomatic way was the eastern parts of the country, some of them are starting to get it and some of them are still being very stubborn and very obstinate. However, we have a coalition of the willing that is going to proceed without federal money, indicating that they are going to do what they can do, and the Ottawa government will not have any rights or reason to stop them. So they undoubtedly have at least 5 of the regions, probably have Nunavik, but Nunavik won't necessarily be able to contribute fiscally just yet, as they only got control of their own resources just last year. So they're probably in a lot of development that still has to happen. Of course, Manitoba is assisting them with that by giving them electricity. So it's a distinct possibility that those 6 regions can create a lot of economic prosperity for that particular part of the country without the permission of Mark Carney and the zealots and the maniacs that are all obsessed over, carbon, which is something that every plant on the planet enjoys in great abundance. They're not going to permit, from what I gathered, any of them to get in the way of their desire to bring prosperity to not only their particular regions, but to the country as a whole. And Quebec can harvest their own gas, or they can do whatever it is they need to do, because it sounds like Ottawa is going to have trouble getting transfer payments out of those particular parts of the country. They may very well be using those transfer payments to build some of these projects. Now, I'm not speaking for them. I'm only extrapolating from what I heard. I mean, I didn't see 2 people sitting there that were for the first time hearing the other person say it. I saw 2 people that made up their mind. They got together on a particular tone, and then they came to the cameras and they utilized that tone, already having an understanding of what each one was, the message they were saying, not word for word, but the message, the tone, indicating to me, of course, that they already have the support of the coalition of the willing. And these 2 premiers came forward to say this is the situation that's going on, and if Mark Carney does not stop this Bill C-69, if he does not stop the Environmental Assessment Act, if he does not stop all of the zealotry that's running through the upper halls of Canada, Danielle Smith, Scott Moe, Wab Kinew, and the other premiers of the territories are going to take matters into their own hands. Now, you could tell me if you saw something different. I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.